Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Antron Watson. I'm with AARP Massachusetts. Today we're going to talk about livable communities. My role here with Massachusetts is really focused on, how do we make our homes and our communities great places to live and grow up and grow old the ways we choose. And one of those things is really about staying connected to community. And when you think about community, one of the things that, I think sometimes goes by the wayside or we don't always put a lot of attention into is our walkability. How are we able to get to and from locations that really benefit us or contribute to our uh, daily connection to life and to each other. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm actually going to hand it over to Brendan Kearney from Walk Massachusetts, because we're going to really kick off our series here, where as we talk about walkability and ways to engage in that space around the state and in your community. Over to you, Brendan.
Great. Thanks so much, Antron. Gonna be sharing some slides. Um, yeah, thanks so much. Really glad to be here and to be talking throughout the year on different aspects of related to walkability. So today we're going to give a brief overview on what walkability is. So first off, Walk Massachusetts. We are a nonprofit organization working all across the state in communities big and small, making walking safer and easier to encourage better health, cleaner environment, more vibrant communities. We also established a vision a couple years ago to really put into practice the work that we are doing. We see Massachusetts as a place where people walking, no matter race, identity, age, ability, or lived experience, should feel safe, connected, and valued on our streets and sidewalks. How do we do that? We have a couple different values that we apply there. We work with community members across the state. Walkable communities really foster that community spirit. We also have an inclusive definition of walkability that accounts for lived experience of folks. We think it's very important to get community feedback and find ways to implement that to create safer streets. We also never work alone. We partner with folks like AARP Massachusetts and community groups all across the state. We are a small organization, small staff, so we know that we work better in collaboration with others. So what do we mean when we talk about walkability? First off, it's more than just the physical act of walking and wheeling. It's really about creating environments that make the decision to walk easier, safer, and more inviting. I usually ask folks for things they notice about this photo, or if they can identify things in the photo that make a place more inviting. We've gotten a range of responses before, such as different types of seating here, including seats with arms. Some people point out that there's shade and trees and other greenery. Really makes it a comfortable environment year round, especially in the heat of the summer. Um, there's a really wide sidewalk here, so people can pass each other without feeling that they're in the way. Um, there are people, and people want to be around other people. Um, Another thing that people point out is that even if they're not engaging with each other, people like being around people. There are multiple people reading there. It's not just a place to pass through. Also, there's people of all different ages, um, active storefronts that draw you in, not just a blank brick wall. Um, Sometimes people also mention the tree, and there's just the nose of a car right here. That could make it so people are further away from moving traffic and feel more protected and safe. Um, one of my favorite comments that I've heard before is people mention that there's trash. So it feels like the space is lived in and it's not just like a place where it doesn't feel that people are. So, maybe there's a need for a trash can here. Um, but walkability is, creating these places that people want to be and can be around other people. And Another thing is that there are pedestrian scale elements that makes people feel like they belong and they're not lost. This is another photo that kind of has that same vibe. This is from a pop-up event in Somerville called Somerville Porch Fest. Porch Fest is now pretty popular in cities and towns all across Massachusetts. But this shows, you can create places people want to be on our streets and sidewalks on a temporary basis too. Um, Things people point out in this photo is that it's quintessentially a New England photo. There's a triple decker, three decker house there in the background with music being played on it. And there's people with Dunkin' iced coffees in the front. Um, also in this picture, people feel safe gathering in the street and sharing space with a person on a bike. And if you look closely, that person on the bike also has a dog. So it's just a fun photo. But we need to be honest, not all parts of our communities look like that. Um, Things that you may notice in these photos, the lack of sidewalks. It really sends the message that people driving are the only people expected in a place like this, um, which really sends the wrong signal. This is a photo from Springfield, and you wouldn't know it by this photo, but immediately behind me when I took this photo is a senior center. And a block and a half beyond the traffic light in the distance is an independent living facility. Um, so, on a map, they got it right where they were co-locating these two facilities really near each other. It's the details in the getting it right here. Because right now there's actually a shuttle bus that brings people to the senior center from the independent living facility. If we think about independence, though, how do we create those places where people are not dependent solely on that shuttle bus to get to see friends or go to a class? So walkability can create that independence. And on the right in this photo, we have a handheld speed detector showing people that are driving well over the posted speed limit. So, what are the signs on that street saying they're not saying that people walking are welcome here. It really it's really more of a highway. So walkability can look different in, different types of communities all across the state and across the country. Whether it's more rural, semi-urban, suburban, and urban areas, one size really doesn't fit all when it comes to walkability. Uh, I'm going to hit on a couple of the benefits to walking and walkability, but they are varied and kind of all-encompassing. These next few stats are all come from America Walks, which is a nationwide organization helping places big and small all across the country. So first off, health. Cardiovascular disease, leading cause of death in the US, but there's an inverse relationship between cardiovascular disease risk and walking and leisure walking. This is actually a photo from Springfield, better photo from Springfield a couple years ago when the Mass in Motion program worked with us to lead a walk audit through one of the neighborhoods of Springfield. It's also good for the environment. To the U.S. National Household Transportation Survey, 13% of all car trips were under a mile or less, and that's 16 billion miles annually. Huge number. What if you were able to exchange driving for walking on some of these trips? If the built environment, the streets and sidewalks, were more accommodating for people to walk and make that choice much easier. Walkable streets also can really encourage business activity, generate greater tax revenue per acre, and offer higher return on investment square foot for square foot than auto-oriented streets. Are people just popping into the neighborhood store to get a couple things they need because it's easy and convenient, or are they getting into a vehicle and going to a strip mall somewhere? This is a really interesting one, but when we think about community, like how do our streets and sidewalks really foster community? How does that physical infrastructure make community connections easy and just the easy choice? So we worked with a group called Mass Inc. on a big report a couple of years ago that looked at social infrastructure. What are those bonds that help create community in places big and small all across Massachusetts? And walkability also, we think of walkability as kind of including 5 different buckets, um, focusing on safety, connections, comfort, destinations, and activity. So we'll tackle a couple of those right now. First off, connections. This is the easy one. Are we making sure we can get people where they need to go? How do we balance walking, biking, transit, cars? Sometimes those are referred to as complete streets. Like how do we, find a balance that works for a particular community? And are the paths and crosswalks where they're needed? and where people are already going or expected. You see this photo in the bottom right. Um, that is where people are walking right now. They kind of wore a path into the grass there. That's sometimes referred to as like a desire line or a goat path. Um, and yeah, sure seems like where people want to be walking. Maybe there should be a sidewalk here. Also, are there destinations? Are there places to walk to or walk from? And are there different destinations for different times of day? Are there places that completely shut down at 5 p.m. or are there places to continue to have people hang out or go to dinner, grab a drink, go to a show? So thinking about destinations that appeal to different people at different times of day too. Safety is a big one. When we think about walkability, are we not only creating places where people can walk, but can they walk and get across the street safely? Are there signage to make sure that people driving know that people are going to be crossing the street? Um, Safety can also mean different things to different people. A perception of safety for uh, I'm a 6'3" white male in my 40s. Like I might have a different perception of personal safety walking in a place than someone else might. So when we think about safety, we're thinking about personal safety as well as safety from traffic. Comfort's also a big one, and this is year-round comfort. You know, is it comfortable to walk in the winter? Is it comfortable to walk in the summer? So in the winter, thinking about ice, snow, like are we clearing sidewalks? Is whose responsibility is it to clear the sidewalk? In the summer, like is there shade? Like are there water fountains available? Like thinking about ways that we can, accommodate a range of folks throughout the year. And also activities like we, highlighted this a little bit earlier, but like are there active streets, meaning are there people out and about? Are there reasons to be out? Is it inviting you in? Are there different, art and lighting to encourage evening activity as well? These are a couple different pop-up locations. I think the bottom right, that was on Mass Ave in Lexington. They activated an alley and, put out some games and stuff like that. Pretty neat idea. So we're going to hit on some of the different pieces of infrastructure now, um, hitting on, roadways, crossings, sidewalks, and streetscape elements. What do we mean by that? Um, taking a step back though, why do all these things matter? And the big thing is uh, for safety, like, ensuring that folks can get around without being struck or killed. As vehicles go fast, as people driving vehicles drive faster, if they were to hit someone, the likelihood, if they were struck at 40 miles per hour, it's much more likely a person is hit and killed. I like this graphic from National Highway Traffic Safety Administration with the cone of vision at the bottom. Um, as you can see, if you're going much faster, your reaction, the cone of vision shows really the reaction time, like what if you were driving, what you can be scanning and be able to anticipate and stop if there is something on the roadway. Um, at 20 miles per hour, the amount of things that you can see and be able to react to are much greater. You have more reaction time to slow, yield, and stop if there are people crossing the street in a crosswalk. So lane widths. Lane widths, we saw that earlier photo, from Springfield where a woman was walking the street without any sidewalks. Those lanes were pretty wide, and they were really accommodating for drivers to go fast. It was really sending that message of, you know, cars belong here and only cars belong here, and you can drive fast. So visually narrowing lanes can really help um, encourage driver behavior to go slower. So, we encourage Main Street roads to be no wider than 10 feet to accommodate vehicles fine, but really try to narrow that roadway to visually narrow the the lanes. Um, Crossings can look very different, but here are a couple different crosswalks from, signalized intersections to unsignalized intersections and mid-block crossings. Um, there are different ways to stripe things, whether it's the ladder style here or um, the big thing here is we encourage communities to make sure they're maintaining these so drivers know that there are crosswalks and that people are going to be crossing at them. A big thing with any of those crosswalks is also restricting parking at the corners so vehicles aren't blocking the crosswalk. And not only are they not blocking the crosswalk, but they're not blocking the sight lines for people that are coming up to it as a driver, to make sure that they can see that people are trying to cross. The good thing about daylighting as well, if you are a driver and they're restricting parking right at the corner, you have a better ability to see other drivers coming to be able to turn onto the street. So daylighting works for multiple reasons. Um, this seems to be pretty basic and pretty understanding, but like a good thing that goes into walkability is making sure there's accessible sidewalks and comfortable sidewalks. Is it smooth? Is it level? Is it wide enough? Like, so not only can you walk along or roll along if you're using a wheelchair, but can people pass each other? Um, Also, are you right on the street and right alongside moving traffic, or is there a bit of a buffer? So a verge, whether that has trees in it or if it's just a wider sidewalk, is there a bit of a gap? Also, these are the bad photos of those sidewalks. Um, are they fully unobstructed? Are trees cut back? Where is the signal equipment placed? Is it placed right in the middle of the sidewalk? You wouldn't, that's a photo from Cape Cod. I think it's in Yarmouth. You would not locate that signal box in the middle of Route 28. Why is it in the sidewalk on that roadway? Um, so yeah, ensuring that these streets are fully accessible and open and available to everyone. Very important. Uh, Curb cuts and radii, that's thinking about corners. Like, how do we ensure that the corners are encouraging slower driver turns? So think of it being a typical street corner with 90-degree corners versus a street corner or an on-ramp, off-ramp of a highway. Like, you need to slow way down to take a 90-degree turn as opposed to a on-ramp on a highway. And this is another reason to, like, how do we minimize the number of driveways as well to minimize the conflict that people have? This is a good photo that shows some of those conflict points. If you have multiple open driveways, think about like a gas station entrance. If it's a wide open driveway, how a person driving could be kind of coming from any direction, as opposed to if there's just one driveway in and out entrance. Other pieces that go into creating walkable streetscape is, are there shelters? Is there for bus stops? Are there appropriate lighting? Are there signs that actually tell people what the speed limit is and how they should be driving around, school zones or other areas where they should expect a lot of people? Um, Another thing is, are lights in the right place? A lot of communities have switched over to LEDs. With the switch to LEDs, are the light poles actually still in the appropriate place to give the light near crosswalks, or do poles need to be, repositioned? Another piece, with the streetscape is like, is there appropriate seating? Like, is there seating at all? Um, a big thing, this was a great picture from Cassidy Park in Boston. They recently redid the park and they didn't just like add a bench or two. They added different types of seating for different uses and for different people. There is movable seating. There are benches that like picnic tables that also accommodate. So if you were using a wheelchair, you could also pull up to the table and be part of a group. There are also benches that have arms. So if folks need a little bit more support getting in and out of the bench, they have that. But there's also benches that don't have arms. So you know what? If you just went for a long run and it's a hot day, you get some water at the water fountain and then you lie on the bench. There's a little bit of accommodating for everyone there. You could, if you want more examples of all these things, City of Boston actually created a great resource. It's called their Street Planning and Design Glossary. It is fantastic, and I'm dropping the link in the chat. But as they were installing different street features, they went out and took photos and then showed exactly where it was in the city, so folks could be comfortable with it and know that they can go to another neighborhood and check it out. Um, a big thing that we use for pushing for a number of these changes are walk audits. We think walk audits are a great community engagement tool, and we really think it's important to get people out on the streets and sidewalks to experience problems that people walking face and to look for ways to make improvements and then make some of those recommendations to decision makers. We actually have a great video series. We call it the Walk Audit Academy that gives you tips on how to lead your own walk audit. And you don't have to start from scratch. That's the big thing. We've consolidated a bunch of resources from folks around the country that people have already created in order to give you options to help you in your effort. You can check out the video series on our YouTube, the Walk Massachusetts YouTube channel, or directly on our website at walkmass.org/WAA. And AARP is one of those resources that we include in the Walk Audit Academy. It's a walk audit toolkit. You can learn how to assess and report on the safety and walkability of a street, intersection, or neighborhood and really inspire needed change. So we appreciate that. And this is an example of a walk audit in action just yesterday. We were looking at a section of Tremont Street in Boston's South End near Mass Ave. Part of the street recently underwent a major reconstruction. So we wanted to look at, what did they get right? But we also looked at a section that had not yet been updated to see, what had they been trying to fix. This audit in particular was a collaborative effort that we branded Shared Spaces. So it was Walk Massachusetts, Mass Bike, bicycling advocacy organization, Transportation for Massachusetts, and the Boston Center for Independent Living. I think this right here on the left, all the side streets on this section of Tremont now have raised crosswalks. So the people driving on the side streets coming up to Tremont, they're actually meeting folks that are walking along Tremont where they're at instead of us going down to the street level. So it's nice and flat going across. You see, the accessible ramps on both sides of the side street and this raised crosswalk here. The other benefit was on the section that had not yet been updated, the ramps there, they were actually flooded out because it had rained over the last couple days. So we did not have to avoid puddles or go through puddles when we were on this section with the raised crosswalks. It was a nice feature. But I am not here to say that everything will change overnight. The big thing on a lot of these big infrastructure projects have long timelines. So I am here to say, get involved if you are interested in, changing your neighborhood and changing how your city does things. This is an example from Somerville. Back in September 2015, I first attended like a road safety audit. MassDOT was looking at some changes in the area because Assembly Row was just getting built. And so there was some mitigation money to pay for some changes nearby. And this is basically, almost 2 years later, there was a follow-up meeting with some state representatives and the mayor at the time. Just this past fall, there's been some great changes made there. Raised crosswalk right by the Stop and Shop and the entrance to 93 to really slow people down here. It's fully signalized and it's also channelized. As you see before, it was kind of just wide open street. Now there's a lot less swerving by drivers. They need to get in the right lane before they come near the crosswalk. Makes it a lot safer for people crossing the street. But there are some short-term things that have been effective and kind of pushing the envelope to make sure that changes happen. This is one of my favorites. I probably shared it before at an AARP event. But this was in Boston neighborhood of Roxbury in winter 2017, 2018. Uh, Teacher here, PE teacher Sam Balto, he was concerned about driver behavior on Walnut Ave near the school. We had done a walk audit near the school before, and people weren't yielding here at this crosswalk, really close to the school. Sam would haul out this in-street yield sign each morning, put it away after school because he thought it would get hit. He wanted to make sure it was there for when the kids were especially going to the school. He and I brainstormed about what we could do, and I jokingly suggested he could put Tom Brady's face on the sign since it might change people's attitudes. He thought we should try it, so we also contacted a reporter for the Globe. He printed out this 8.5:10 photo of Patriot quarterback at the time, Tom Brady, stuck it on a clipboard, and we set up morning arrival to try it out. It was really popular. Like it really caught attention, and like we got people talking about how we make it safe to get to the school for the kids. But attention was we had an end goal here. Like, how do we create a safer Walnut Ave crossing? And this was not the final version, but like we got changes. We got uh, tactical island, mounted flex posts, repainted crosswalks, and there is more to come. It's still in process, but they got a Massachusetts Safe Routes to School infrastructure grant to not just improve this crosswalk, but really think about access to the school throughout the neighborhood. And they're working with community members to like really think about how you fully get around the community and make streets safer. So it really kicked off that brainstorming session. So that is all I have, and I really appreciate folks coming out today.
Brendan, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation to really, get us talking about walkability, walk audits in our communities. Is there a walk group or anything that folks can join in on to continue this conversation that you would recommend?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We do have a monthly call called our Walk Mass Network. It's on the third Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m., which happens to be tomorrow. So we'd love people to join us tomorrow or at any of the future ones, the third Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Thank you all for joining us today. As Brendan said, just shared the link to the next Walk Mass Network, I guess the network page to learn more about that. We do have about 3 more of these programs coming up. We're going to take a deeper dive into the ways that you all can engage in walkability in your communities, your towns, your cities, and just make it great for folks of all ages growing up. Um, Thank you. Thank you all for joining. I see someone has a question. If you want, you can ask it real quick. I'd love to, we always have Brendan on the line, get that answered for you. But otherwise, we'd love to have you join us at some of these other things, be it the Walk Network meeting or the next handful of events. Otherwise, I want to say thank you for joining, and we hope to see you in the next one.
Great. Thanks so much. Deb, feel free to email me.